Connor McGovern is back.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Well, folks, welcome in. We have a lot to cover on this episode, including a bunch of cap-clearing moves that the Bills have made, but we start with a very pleasant surprise, and it's the return of Connor McGovern. The Bills and Connor McGovern agreeing to a 4-year, $52 million extension. And folks, I'm surprised. I didn't feel like there was a lot of momentum for this to happen. I was concerned that Connor McGovern priced himself out of coming back to Buffalo. I've been thinking about who could replace him, and then it happens. The notification comes through. Connor McGovern is staying. He doesn't even get to free agency, which very much surprises me, given all the things we've been talking about, how the center market is booming. There's needs across the league, contending teams needing centers. Connor McGovern doesn't even hit free agency. He returns to Buffalo on a 4-year, $52 million extension. That comes in at $13 million a season, which places him right now as the, I guess, third highest paid center in the league in terms of APY. Creed Humphrey is number 1 with the Chiefs at $18 million. Then you have Cam Jurgens with the Eagles at $17 million. Elgton Jenkins with the Packers is also at $17 million. And then it's Connor McGovern at $13. Now, Drew Dahlman, who was the excellent center for the Chicago Bears, retired last week. He was at $14 million. So this actually comes in under what Drew Dahlman signed in free agency last year to go to the Chicago Bears. And of course, we know Tyler Linderbaum is going to be the new highest paid center in the NFL. He will top Creed Humphrey at $18 million a season. But this not only comes in as a surprise that he returns, but at a lower cost than I was anticipating. My estimation was that Connor McGovern would top $15 million a season. SpotRack had him estimated at $16.3 million a season. Now, shout out to Pro Football Focus. They had him at 13.3. So they come in with the closer projection there. But this feels like a very good value based on who Connor McGovern is as a player, the need across the league, the surging center market. It's a good surprise. It's a good surprise. And so let's get into things I like and things I didn't like or don't like about this move. What I like is Connor McGovern. He's a consistent, durable player. Very consistent. Back-to-back seasons with 0 sacks allowed. He's only allowed 2 quarterback hits over the last 2 seasons combined. Has never had a season of more than 4 accepted penalties against him. And he hasn't missed time. And one of the interesting things that we learned through the Tim Graham article last week is that in week 5, he broke a knuckle in his snapping hand and torn ligaments in his snapping hand. Didn't miss any games. Week 13, torn triceps. Didn't miss any games. Didn't have any bad snaps. Consistent, durable. He turns 29 in November. And so he should very much age well into this contract. I don't think there's any concerns about him declining rapidly physically and not being able to perform for the next 4 seasons. I love that there's continued chemistry with this offensive line. And or at least I was concerned about a lot of the transition. It felt inevitable. And while there is probably going to be transition at left guard, your pillars at tackle and center are locked up. Those are the most important positions on your offensive line, your 2 tackles and your center. And of course, I was curious about Cedric Van Pran-Granger stepping into this job and what he can mean, and a 5th-round pick and potentially being a draft steal, but you stick with the thing that's been working. And now you have that as depth, and you have a really good starting center locked in. And with all the things that are going on with this football team, a new defense, a new head coach, it's nice to feel like this part remains intact, and it's a good thing. And I also didn't want to see Connor McGovern go to the Patriots or the Ravens, to AFC contenders, rivals, with a need at center, but he stays in Buffalo, which, again, after that Tim Graham piece from last week and the quotes from Connor McGovern in that piece, it didn't feel like we'd be having this conversation today, but maybe that article helped, right? Helped get this done. And so here we are, Connor McGovern back with the Bills. When it comes to things I don't like about this, I don't think there's really anything. I think you do have to acknowledge that it all but guarantees David Edwards at left guard won't return. And I like David Edwards, but if you were going to keep one between Connor McGovern and David Edwards, you pick Connor McGovern. The positional value component is real there. And I think I'll say this. I think David Edwards will get more on his contract on the open market than Connor McGovern coming back. And so there's an element of cost that I think also nudges me towards Connor McGovern, in addition to me thinking he's a better player at a more important position. There's been some follow-up, 2 big follow-up thoughts that I've seen in some of the response to this move. First of all, the idea of Connor McGovern going back to left guard and him being your solution there. And then you do have Cedric Van Pran-Granger who could step in at center. Maybe there's some scenarios where that would make some sense, like if you had an injury or something like that. But ultimately, Connor McGovern has said repeatedly that center is his natural position. I think he's a better center than he is a left guard. It's a more important position. I'm keeping Connor McGovern at center. The other thing I continue to see come up since this was announced is this thought that maybe the Bills could trade O'Cyrus Torrence. I think it's a worthwhile conversation, but I don't expect it, and I'm not sure I fully would love the idea. If he's a good young starting guard, keep him. And, of course, if he's just going to walk in free agency next year, that's not going to sound like a good idea. But I just kind of feel like as a player that they drafted, developed, has been a consistent starter that's young, I just don't know that he's going to get away. If he's going to walk in free agency next year, then, yeah, there's a heck of a case to go ahead and send him off and see what you can get. But I don't know. Keep your good young players, right? Isn't that the whole point of this? Building a team, trying to contend, is if you get good young players, you keep them. And so that's what I would want the Bills to do with O'Cyrus Torrence. I'm still hoping for more growth from O'Cyrus Torrence, but he's obviously trending towards becoming a very high-paid guard. I'll be interested in paying attention to the guard market this offseason, where guys like David Edwards lands, like Zion Johnson, Dylan Parham. I think those contracts will give us some good clues as to where things will go with Osiris Torrence. But I don't know, keep your good young players. That's my thought. Don't trade them away. All right, folks, we got more to do. Connor McGovern's back. That's an awesome surprise. I'm very excited about his return and where the contract landed. Now, there's a whole lot more to get to. The Bills released 4 players. Have plenty to say about that. Plus, Ed Oliver's contract has been restructured. And then I want to consider where the Bills' cap position is and what other opportunities they have to clear cap. So we got all that coming up, folks. Be sure to stick with me. Workplace chaos, deadlines are stacking up, the inbox is overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need to make the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. There'll be less stress, less time, more results when you need to hire the right person and cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and show support by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, folks, welcome back. The Bills released 4 players, and I want to talk about those players and those decisions. Let's start with Taron Johnson. That's the big one. And before we get into the quote-unquote benefit of releasing Taron Johnson, let's acknowledge that he had an awesome run as a Buffalo Bill. I mean, the guy redefined the nickel position in the NFL. Sean McDermott used him as a full-time player on the second level, and this eventually became a league-wide defensive trend. Slot corner becoming its own entity in all-pro voting is because of Taron Johnson. And so, an awesome player, an awesome run. He's instrumental to the evolution of defensive football. I mean, hat tip, Taron Johnson. Huge. And you think about some of those great moments. The pick 6 against the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs. Taron picks off Lamar, houses it over 100 yards on the return. A moment you will never forget. How about picking off Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City the year after the 13 seconds loss? Mahomes gets the ball back. You feel like they're going to go drive the ball down the field and spoil the Bills taking the lead, and Taron Johnson calls game, picks him off. How about in 2024 in New Jersey, picking off Aaron Rodgers at the end of the game to ice that? I mean, there's been some awesome moments. The Colts game a couple years ago, picking off, was it Joe Flacco for a pick 6? Then he had another big takeaway later in the game. Taron Johnson was awesome. A 4th-round pick, 8 seasons, 113 games, and so much respect for him across the league. I feel like anytime the Bills were playing an opponent and you listen to their quarterback or their head coach talk about the Bills, they always want to talk about Taron Johnson and the role that he filled. Listen to John Gruden talk about him. Aaron Rodgers recently just glazed him up as one of the most underrated players in the league. And so he gets all the flowers, ton of respect and admiration. I do feel like the last 2 years, especially the last year, you saw him wear down a little bit. Part of that's probably because of the role he's been asked to fill in Buffalo. Maybe that accelerated his decline a little bit. Maybe he just needs to get healthy, and He'll be a good player again. But the Bills ultimately move on here. And there's not a whole lot of cap benefit to the move. They get $2 million in cap space, but there is a $9.5 million dead cap hit to move on from Taron Johnson. Now, the Bills did have the opportunity to designate this as a post-June 1 release. And the benefit of doing that is, well, again, air quotes benefit, is that you would spread out the dead cap hit between this year and 2027. So you take a $2.7 million 2026 dead cap hit and then a $6.8 million 2027 dead cap hit, but you would get $8.9 million in 2026 cap savings. And so you might be thinking, well, why wouldn't the Bills do that? Well, because you don't want to have $6.8 million in 2027 dead cap. Don't make a decision to release Taron Johnson this year also affect your books next year when you can get it all done this year. And so that would be the reason to not designate it as a post-June 1st release. Also, keep in mind, if you designate it as a post-June 1st release, you don't get the cap savings until then. So it doesn't help you become cap compliant before the start of the new league year. You get the cap space in June. It cannot help you right now. So those are some of the reasons why you wouldn't process this as a post-June 1st release. Now, what's also interesting to me about this is the insiders that reported this. And keep in mind, insiders are just mouthpieces. They're mouthpieces for agents. They're mouthpieces for teams. There was an intentional message about how he wasn't a fit for the new defense, which certainly has me curious. Makes me ask the question, what is Jim Leonhard going to ask of the slot position that isn't in Taron Johnson's wheelhouse? Because if you think about what Taron Johnson is supposed to be in the NFL, he's a very good run defender, tackler. From a coverage perspective, like he's been a good player in the slot. So what is it about the fit? What is he going to ask the slot player to do that isn't technically within Taron Johnson's wheelhouse? And the thing that came to mind for me was the interchangeability to play safety. I wonder about how interchangeable Jim Leonhard wants that position to be for guys that can play in deeper alignments and also in the slot. And that would be the one thing that I thought, well, if you don't think Taron Johnson is declining and aging, well, that's the one thing you would be concerned that he really can't do. And so I'm very interested in what's next for Taron Johnson, what opportunities are there, and how he plays. But his run in Buffalo has come to an end. So what's the plan? Obviously, this now becomes an important need, slot corner. The Bills are going to be in nickel and dime every bit of 60% of snaps, every bit of it. And now you need a player to fill that role. And when it comes to guys under contract, the only one that makes a lick of sense to me would be Jordan Hancock. And I'm very curious to see what the plan is for him after a very shaky rookie season, but one that you could understand based on circumstances where he was trained everywhere and probably never became very comfortable at any one spot. So Bills have a huge need now at slot corner. The thing about Jordan Hancock, though, is the interchangeability to play safety would be more within his skill set than Taron Johnson. So Taron Johnson released, just like Taylor Rapp was released. Taylor Rapp, 3 seasons with the Bills, 36 games, 24 starts. Thought he was a critical player in 2024, and you felt his absence in that Kansas City AFC Championship loss. I'll always remember the game-clinching interception against Miami in 2023, the interception against Baltimore in the playoffs on the opening drive. Awesome play. But then 2025 happened, and goodness gracious, did he struggle in a big way. Big struggles in 2025. Playing through some type of knee deal. But obviously the Bills move on. They save $3.1 million in cap and generate $667,000 in dead cap. The Bills also released Curtis Samuel, wide receiver, That gets the Bills $6.1 million in cap savings, $3.5 million in dead cap. Curtis Samuel's run with the Bills, 20 games in 2 seasons, had 38 catches. Curtis Samuel in 2 seasons with the Bills had 38 catches and played 529 snaps. He earned $15.8 million to do that. So think about it like this. That's $29,808 per snap. Good money if you can find it, folks. Obviously, a huge whiff of a free agent signing in Curtis Samuel. The Bills also released Dane Jackson. And when that announcement came through, my first thought was he was signed for 2026. He had to be released. And then my buddy Greg Thompson of Cover One shared with me on X that when the Bills elevated him from the practice squad on January 7th for a playoff game, they gave him a 2026 minimum contract. And so, yes, he had to be released from it, and it frees $1.2 million in cap space. And, of course, I mean, Dane Jackson is going to be remembered as a disappointing player, I think. There was a stretch where he was a pretty good depth player, but the last few years when he's had to play, I mean, just look at that one snap he played in the playoffs against Denver. One snap, gives up the touchdown to Marvin Mims. I maintain that's a horrible defensive play call, that for one snap he comes on the field and you isolate him in man coverage with no help over the top. Like, you get what you deserve there, but, you know, Dane Jackson was just not a guy that could really come in and help the football team, and kind of a Sean McDermott special. And so he moves on. All right, folks, we got more to do. The Bills restructured Ed Oliver's contract, and then I want to try to gain the right perspective as to what the Bills cap position is. So we'll do that here next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. We live in a world where we can stream anything, order food in minutes, and carry supercomputers in our pockets, and somehow buying tickets to a live game still feels complicated. There's hidden fees, jumping prices, endless steps. There's got to be a better way. And there is, and that's why I use the GameTime app. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets simple, whether it's NFL games, concerts, comedy, whatever you're into. In fact, I recently jumped into the app to check out tickets for an upcoming comedy event that I wanted to go to with my wife, and we found tickets very, very quickly, just a few minutes. You can see the entire seat view before you purchase. The price on the app includes all fees, so there's no surprises coming at checkout. You can even spot zone deals where you pick the section and GameTime picks the seat for extra savings. So 2 taps, you'll have great seats locked in, fast, easy, done. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. All right, folks, welcome back. The Bills restructured Ed Oliver's contract, and this move creates $10.26 million in cap space. And so the Bills converted $12.8 million of 2026 salary into a signing bonus, and then your new cap hit for Ed Oliver becomes reduced, and you spread that out into future years. There were void years added to the deal for salary cap purposes. And so basically what happens is Ed Oliver is going to count $13.6 million against the cap this year. He'll count $28.7 next year, and then there's an option year in 2028. So obviously the Bills are locked in on Ed Oliver, and I will say once again that I have no concerns about Ed Oliver in Jim Leonhard's defense. There are players just like Ed Oliver who play extremely well in odd front defenses, just like Ed Oliver himself did in college at Houston when he played in an odd front defense. Kobe Turner with the Rams, penetration style, undersized player. Milton Williams with the Patriots. Zach Allen with the Broncos. Jalen Redmond with the Minnesota Vikings. Kalijah Kancey with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do not discredit Ed Oliver's ability to play in this defense because you think he's undersized and a 3 technique only. There are prototypes across the league, and Ed Oliver himself played in this style of defense. Now, if you have other concerns, okay. But it's not because of his skill set and how it applies to the defense. I'm not concerned about that piece. And the Bills are obviously locked in on Ed Oliver. So what is the Bills cap position, right? That's the question everybody has. And there's not an easy explanation. There's a lot of dust that needs to settle. But I'll do my best to kind of talk through it with you here. So before the DJ Moore trade and all these moves we just talked about, the 4 players released, the Connor McGovern extension, the Ed Oliver restructure, the Bills were over by $8.3 million in space, right? So then they make these moves. Ed Oliver restructure, Taron release, Taylor Rapp release, Curtis Samuel release, Dane Jackson release. That clears $22.7 million in cap. Well, if you take that and factor that the Bills were over by 8.3, the Bills are now about 14 and some change in available cap space. Well, then you have 2 new things to factor. The DJ Moore cap hit. And the way that works is you have to take on the full $24.5 million. You have to take that on. And then you can restructure it. So you have to clear enough cap to take that on. And then once you do that, you can restructure the deal and you can reduce that year 1 cap hit down as low as $6.7 million. Now, when you go to the websites Over the Cap or Spot Rack and you look at where they have the Bills cap number, you have got to remember they are assuming that full $24.5 million cap hit, when in all actuality, it can be as low as $6.7 million. So those numbers are good, but there's important context to understand why they are what they are. And they are assuming the full 24.5. Again, it's probably going to be much lower and as low as 6.7 million. And then you have now a Connor McGovern extension where if you go through the new norm of the NFL where the year 1 cap hit is 60% of the APY, then it would be 7.8 million. So you would take the 6.7 million for DJ Moore, the 7.8 million for Connor McGovern, which pretty much washes out that mid-14 number that we talked about in terms of where the Bills are at. My guess is that through all of this, the players release, the restructure, DJ Moore down to 6.7 million, factoring in a Connor McGovern year 1 cap hit of 60% of the APY, I think the Bills are right at zero. Within a $200,000 of zero. Again, I could be wrong because there's a lot of dust that needs to settle. I don't know exactly how much the Bills are going to restructure DJ Moore down to. I don't know exactly how much Connor McGovern's year 1 cap hit. It could be less than that 60%. I would not surprise me at all. But I think they're probably close to zero, which obviously means they have to do more. They have to do more to create cap space. So let me remind you of the most obvious cap clearing possibilities that exist right now. First of all, it's the Dawson Knox situation. What are they going to do there? Extend him, release him, pay cut. What's the plan? Depending on what they do, they can free up between $8 and $10 million on Dawson Knox alone. There's the Josh Allen restructure, which could create $12.6 million in cap space. Deion Dawkins restructure, that can create over $11 million. Michael Hoyt restructure, that's $3.7 million. They could restructure Josh Palmer. Might not want to, but they could. That would free up $6.5 million. You could extend Osiris Torrence. That can get you a little over $2 million. You could extend Dorian Williams. That can get you $2 million. You can release Tyler Bass. That can get you $3 million. So those are the most obvious moves to me to clear cap space that still exists. But what I really want you to hear when you consider that the Bills are probably right at zero, that they have a lot more needs to fill, that there's a lot more cap clearing possibilities, I want to remind you of something that Greg Thompson, again, my buddy from Cover One, he says this a lot, and I think it's important. Every restructure won't be done proactively. And this is the example that Greg always gives. Do we empty our bank account and go to the store with every cent to our name in our pocket, or do we shop knowing we have access to more money if we find the right thing? So don't freak out about where the Bills cap position is, the needs, the players you want them to get. You don't go out and do it all. You do it as you need it. So keep that in mind as we navigate the coming days where there's going to be more movement. More players will be added. Maybe more will be subtracted. But inevitably there will be cap moves done. It doesn't make sense to just do them all. It makes sense to do them as things progress. All right. We're caught up for now. I could hit end recording, publish this podcast, and find out there's more news. That's going to be the reality of the week ahead. Kind of living in a very rapid news cycle. And I'm going to get content done as quickly as I can whenever I kind of have enough to fill a show. So head on a swivel this week because the content is just going to come as it comes. I think the big thing is just make sure that you hit that subscribe button because we have a lot going on. Of course, we'll be covering everything like we always do. We've got Bill Squad Monday and Thursday this week at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Tons of conversation in what promises to be a busy week at One Bills Drive. We'll be covering it all for you here on Locked On Bills. Don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.